I rushed to care for my Nana and faced a banshee roommate over towels and a lotion. Mishap-3 a.m. chaos left me in disbelief. I, a 21-year-old female, was volunteered to care for my grandmother, who is currently experiencing moderate Alzheimer's disease, following her brief discharge from the intensive care unit after a serious fall. She has been tachycardic and has a long-standing heart condition that has required surgery for some time. However, due to her age and deteriorating memory, our family has decided that it would be more compassionate for her to live joyfully rather than subjecting her to pharmaceutical treatments that might strip away the dignity and happiness she has left. For us, watching her enjoy life in her frail state feels preferable to seeing her suffer with a healthy heart. I had not seen my grandmother since I was 15, before which I last visited her at the age of 16, after my grandfather passed away from pancreatic cancer in late 2018. Late Thursday night, while working my second shift, I received a text indicating that I was needed to look after my grandmother for the week, since my mother and her sisters were preoccupied with their own commitments. Of the 3 sisters, Sarah, not her real name, the eldest, was going on a business trip. The middle sister, Kara, my mom, had to work after taking significant time off for events like awards for my younger sister and sudden veterinarian appointments. The youngest sister, Sierra, a professor at a university, had to be in the lab all week. I was actually pleased with this arrangement since I missed my grandmother. She is the one person in my life whom I trust completely and who provides me with immense comfort. Although I tend to be avoidant and reclusive, presenting a confident and extroverted facade with my quirky sense of humor, she is the only person I could never distance myself from because she always made me feel safe and cherished, even amidst the extreme challenges I faced during my childhood. I am a survivor of sexual assault, domestic violence, and childhood trauma, and I have made numerous suicide attempts since I was 4, with the most recent being not too long ago. But I managed to decline that path after gathering the strength that remained within me. Please understand, I am not sharing this to invoke your sympathy. It serves merely as context for how profoundly my grandmother matters to me and how deeply I missed her after spending years apart due to family conflicts. This year, she will be my Valentine, despite being single every Valentine's Day since my birth, and after dating 3 different individuals who all ended our relationships around that holiday. Returning to my situation, I informed my aunts that I currently had no funds available as I was trying to manage my bills and debts, yet they reassured me that they would cover my expenses to travel and care for my grandmother. While I would never prioritize money in this matter, I ultimately accepted their offer solely out of the kindness in my heart. I boarded a flight without fully recognizing the weight on my heart. I am still mourning several aspects of my life. The first realization is that I did not truly live through my childhood, I merely survived it. I never experienced the joy of being a child. I always clung to the idea of growing up, just to escape my toxic family and evade their gaslighting and narcissistic abuse, predominantly from my father's side. I wished for a different reality where I didn't grow up afraid or with insecurities about myself. The second aspect that haunts me is witnessing my childhood fade away, not just because I've aged. Before arriving at my grandmother's, I encountered news that plunged me into a deep depression akin to an endgame state, as this individual in my life symbolized the innocence I used to possess, and I could not comprehend the rapid transformations occurring around me. And now that my grandmother is losing her memory, I mourn the person she used to be. It devastates me that I can no longer sit in her lap, or hear her stories about her first-grade students, or enjoy trips to Dunkin' Donuts for her usual large, unsweetened iced tea and a box of donuts. Those small yet significant moments now exist only as fleeting memories in her mind. I find myself crying as I write this because I am still grappling with the absence of the emotional safety net she provided. She remains everything to me. This is overwhelming and brings back a wave of nostalgia as I revisit the simpler moments in life before I truly grasped the long-term impact of my experiences. By the time I arrived in Manchester, New Hampshire, I felt the pangs of homesickness tugging at me, and part of me sensed the urge to retreat, yet I persevered, knowing this was my one opportunity to see my grandmother before potentially being unable to do so for an extended period. Sierra, the youngest sister, picked me up from the airport, and took me to the assisted living facility where my grandmother resides. Upon arrival, I realized my grandmother hardly recognized me and often repeated the same question. Sarah was also present with her, and I subsequently met her Italian-American roommate, Emma, who has hearing difficulties that sometimes complicate communication. The situation escalated after my aunts left me alone with my grandmother during my initial experience as a certified nursing assistant. Overall, everything went smoothly with my grandmother making progress in various areas, while she seemed tired and unmotivated in others. The most significant concern was irritable bowel syndrome, but nothing serious. I prepared her clothing, planned activities, and ensured she was comfortable and happy. I, too, was comfortable because I genuinely enjoyed spending time with her and doing what I could to uplift her spirits. Everything started to change on Wednesday morning. I was awakened at 4 a.m. by Emma, my grandmother's overly dramatic, nearly deaf Italian-American roommate, hollering about missing towels. I remembered seeing some towels near the shower, which I had used to dry my hair, as they were smaller, and I didn't want to use the larger, thicker towels on the opposite side of the bathroom. I simply preferred to use towels that weren't damp from my hair. I hadn't realized those towels belonged to her, but I acknowledge it was my oversight for not returning them. I intended to wash them and hang them back by the shower eventually. We solved that issue, and I dashed to Dunkin' to grab 2 butter pecan hot espressos for myself, while also finding some time to write before heading back to assist my grandmother. Today, which is Thursday, is the reason I am reaching out to you. It felt as if I were in a military boot camp. I sprang awake to what sounded like nails on a chalkboard, or perhaps a banshee screaming at me at 3 a.m. Dunkin' wasn't even open yet for me to get a butter pecan hot espresso, and while I could drive to a 24-hour CVS market to find what she needed, I opted to manage the situation similarly to how I handled Emma yesterday. I spoke to her calmly and reasonably, while she continued to yell at me about a blue cream bottle I did not recognize. I offered to lend her some of my moisturizers to see if it would help, but she refused. She just kept getting louder, escalating to the point of accusing my grandmother and insulting her, which crossed a significant line. I understood that Emma was frustrated, but her volume level was outrageous at 3 a.m. when everyone was trying to sleep instead of approaching me constructively to inquire about the missing items. I suggested helping her find what she needed, even offering to purchase additional products if necessary, though I could not be certain at the time what she wanted. I pointed out the ample lotion she had on the cabinet floor beneath the sink. There was her foot cream and her diabetic moisturizer, which I recognized because the nurses come in nightly to administer her insulin. Both of those containers were quite full, standing in stark contrast to the 2 small, nearly empty tubes of aloe lotion at the bottom of the cupboard. Additionally, I noticed another moisturizer in the medicine cabinet next to the sink mirror, which was also relatively full. As the conversation progressed, I realized she was referring to the Dermasul aloe lotion cream, of which there were 2 green bottles. The first was completely flat, so I discarded it as it was no longer useful. The second bottle had little product left, which I had been using on my grandmother's feet and hands for a manicure and pedicure since she had been feeling unwell, and her skin was in dire need of moisturizing. She had complained about her feet hurting, and I had noted her toenails might be ingrown while her feet had been shedding more skin than usual. I would have used my moisturizers, but I only had a tiny Hydro Boost moisturizer and 2 small containers of cocoa butter lotion. I hadn't thought to look there, as the cabinet appeared shared, and I assumed it contained items belonging to both of us, without any clear labels indicating ownership. I had only used Emma's towels, which were replaceable, and a bit of aloe lotion to care for my grandmother's aging skin, an act of love on my part since caring for her body appeared to be low on her priority list. I intended to provide her with the same caliber of care she showed me during my upbringing. The cupboard simply looked like a communal space, and I could not determine which items belonged to whom. After about an hour, the situation escalated further when Emma claimed she had misplaced her purple comb, accusing me of taking and hiding it, and even insinuating I had used her laundry facilities when I had only laundered my own and my grandmother's items. Emma insisted that her used towels should go into her laundry basket, yet I only utilized my pink hairbrush. I genuinely had no idea where the supposed purple comb was. There was no laundry belonging to Emma mixed in with ours. I didn't even enter her room, and truthfully, I had only utilized my grandmother's native body wash a handful of times to freshen up my face for acne treatment and attend to personal hygiene since I was menstruating. I maintain my own body wash and acne cream, both of which were still abundant, and would never consider using Emma's items, especially if they were running low. Moreover, given my grandmother's condition, I would have gladly purchased her replacements if only she would calm the fuck down. Eventually, the nurses arrived because Emma's screaming persisted. I remained nearby to ensure that she wouldn't disrupt my grandmother or harass her in my absence. Otherwise, between Emma and my grandmother, I would have rushed downstairs for not one, but 3 butter pecan hot espressos. However, due to the escalating nature of the situation, I stayed put and engaged in a shouting match with Emma because her behavior was absolutely ridiculous. Normally, I am a very rational person, but this elderly lady was really testing my limits, and my reaction surprised me because I was no longer maintaining my usual sweet demeanor after she insulted my family and me. Like hell would I sit back and allow someone to treat me that way. The nurses reassured me that I was not to blame and that Emma behaved like this consistently, even when there was no apparent issue. All the fucking time. They advised me that if the situation escalated again, I could utilize the emergency cord in the bathroom or my grandmother's nurse assistant's bracelet for immediate help. I was uncertain about how to proceed and allowed Emma the opportunity to search through my belongings and summon assistance if she desired. I didn't stop her, but the fact that she was rudely awakening those around her and disturbing my vulnerable grandmother has left me extremely frustrated after 2 nights of this behavior since I arrived. So, am I the one at fault for borrowing items from my grandmother's roommate without prior permission? Story 2. After 18 years, I realize my husband's potential is an illusion. From couch proposals to hidden debt, I'm exhausted and ready for change. Flushed face. After a humorous assortment of first dates during my 20s, I finally encountered a man I genuinely wished to continue seeing. He was entertaining, slightly introverted, and at 25 years old, he appeared decent on paper. He had completed his college education, but was uncertain about his career path, eventually opting to work as a real estate agent while also assisting with mortgage and tax services at his parents' firm. Not too shabby. Eventually, I moved in with him and experienced an unexpected pregnancy. So I suppose we should get married. That was his spontaneous proposal while we lounged on the couch. I arranged our wedding for just 5 months later and promptly sent out the save the dates since I didn't want to be too far along. They had just arrived when, at 14 weeks, I learned that we had lost the baby. Most miscarriages occur by 8 weeks, so this was an excruciating surprise. We decided to proceed with the wedding anyway. While I wished he had proposed out of true desire, he was an adventurous guy who enjoyed cliff diving and impromptu camping trips during the coldest months of the year. So was it that strange that we would marry on a whim prompted by the pregnancy? However, a week prior to the wedding, I began to realize how little I knew about my future husband. He had never completed his degree. He barely accrued a semester's worth of credits. Somehow, in more than 2 years of dating, he hadn't found the right time to share this information, claiming he didn't want to start off with a lie. So, I was allegedly presented with the option to cancel this wedding for which my out-of-state relatives were flying in a wedding for which I had already spent $5,000 of my own money if I did not wish to marry this deceitful individual. I ultimately chose to proceed. The fabrications continued. He was not particularly successful as a real estate agent. He had scarcely completed any transactions and did not genuinely work for his parents either. It was more akin to him receiving a $1,600 monthly allowance to spare them from embarrassment regarding his failure to become independent. He was terminated when their business dwindled, and he concealed this from me. He chose to say nothing. He asserted it was because he wanted to demonstrate to me that he was a writer and was diligently working on his first book. This was around 2008, yet I would not see a draft of this book until 2013. He truly is a writer and manages to produce 1 book every 5 years. For some reason, I believed this was my opportunity to be the supportive wife. I would back my husband's writing aspirations while he returned to university, on the condition that he pursued a degree to become an English teacher or a professor, in case the nearly impossible goal of becoming a novelist did not materialize. During the first 3 months he had at home to write full-time, his obsessive-compulsive disorder revealed its true nature, and he spent the entire period immersed in watching adult content. I wish I were joking, but I am not. He would tell me it was a productive day, and things were progressing, yet he wrote absolutely nothing. He did enroll in some courses, and returning to school alleviated his anxiety just a bit and helped him make some progress. He was still attending school when we adopted our first 3 children simultaneously. He worked as a pizza delivery driver 2 nights a week because I was not comfortable with a complete lack of income. At times, it was merely once a week. Who has children with a pizza delivery person? I was flourishing in my career, and we could barely manage on one income, and I expected his second income to be sufficient once he became a teacher or a writer. This was in 2011. You can probably guess where this is going. He never truly became a teacher. He barely made it through the credentialing process of student teaching. He started medication for his attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and anxiety, which enabled him to complete the second attempt at student teaching, but obliterated his writing process, unfortunately. He can be medicated and function as a teacher or be unmedicated and write, but he hasn't managed to find the balance for both. During this period, he turned to alcohol to cope, which was frightening since this man does not grasp the concept of everything in moderation. He would consume a full glass of vodka to help me sleep, and leave for his commute to school a mere 4 hours later while still reeking of alcohol. I had a baby and our 3 adopted kids at home, feeling utterly trapped. He indeed completed his book, and during the editorial review process, it had to be divided into 2 volumes, which pushed publication back several years. In 2018 and 2019, his books were finally launched, selling over 10,000 copies, making several Amazon lists, and earning excellent reviews. This is perhaps the most heartbreaking part of this story. He is genuinely skilled. But after covering the costs associated with publishing, his modest accomplishment only compensated for the expense of exceptional cover art and never truly netted us more than a few $1,000s after nearly a decade of effort. He authored a trilogy, published only 2 of the installments, and the third has taken 6 years to complete. Shortly before the pandemic began, he informed me he would never become a teacher because he could not manage both teaching and writing, and he would not give up writing. At this point, he had been a student and a less than stellar stay-at-home parent for 9 years. Our youngest child was beginning kindergarten, and there was no reason for a parent to be at home. We did embark on a random business venture during the pandemic, which strained our marriage. It performed adequately, and I completely understood why he could not write during that time. However, he is as competent as an entrepreneur as he was as a real estate agent. He is plagued by anxiety and indecision, constantly trapped in his thoughts. Ultimately, the business failed when profits began to barely cover expenses. We ended up with a $7,000 deficit when it closed, and for some inexplicable reason, he concealed this debt from me for a few years until my own credit started suffering due to his mismanagement. I am currently in the process of paying it off, in addition to years of high interest. Have I mentioned he has $37,000 in student loans? I feel that should be noted somewhere. Anyway, after our business collapsed and he descended into a cycle of despair, anxiety, and deception, I couldn't pull him back. I also couldn't leave him. He remains the father of my children. He endured physical abuse in his childhood, and either he would have to move in with his abuser, or I would have to pay spousal support I could not afford. In either case, I felt certain he might harm himself. With 5 children and 15 years invested, I believed I had a moral duty to not abandon my husband to his fate. Thus, I stayed with him through over 2 years of unemployment. Not as a stay-at-home parent, our children were in school, and he was just stagnating. Why not teach on OutSchool? Why not substitute teach? Why not drive for Uber? I explored every option, yet he would show extreme interest, but then withdraw 95–100% of the way into any new endeavor. I tried to tap into his youthful sense of adventure, but it turned out to be an act. He is a complete homebody who requires familiar comforts to feel secure. Consequently, I liquidated my assets, purchased an RV that could accommodate his creature comforts, and sent him across the country to help us secure a smaller home we could afford indefinitely based on my income. I managed to shuffle around over $100,000 in cash during this time, while he concealed $7,000 in high-interest debt. He continually kept putting all new assets solely in my name. I assumed he was doing so due to his depression, yet it was to safeguard our assets from potential legal action concerning the debt he could not keep up with, even though I could have effortlessly paid it off. The chaos he created is astonishing. It took another 18 months before I uncovered the hidden debt. We gradually adjusted to our new existence, and eventually, he became motivated enough to make a series of healthier choices that culminated in him becoming a shuttle bus driver. He earns what a stock clerk might make at Costco. He constantly complains about how teaching does not compensate enough for the effort involved, yet he earns about half what a teacher does. He now asserts that as of today, in 2025, he is merely 3 chapters, and perhaps an epilogue, away from completing his trilogy. Previously, with the first 2 books as relatively recent releases, for every dollar we spent on promotion, we would earn between $1.10 and $1.30, which is considered successful in the independent publishing realm but ultimately restricts profit margins. With the new book, my analysis suggests we could earn $1.50 to $2 for every dollar spent on promotion, translating to a potential profit of $500 to $1,000 for every $1,000 spent on advertising. Unfortunately, scaling this success seems unlikely, and it's more probable that returns would diminish, meaning that after 15 long years of supporting my writer husband, I will likely see our household income finally reach what it could have been had he pursued a teaching career. Throughout this journey, my anxious husband has often been too absorbed in his own thoughts to offer love and support to me. While he provides enough for the children, I believe I do my part as well, but there never seems to be anything left for us. I often focus on the kids, my work, and household responsibilities, while he frequently gets caught up in, "Why is she so short with me? Is she upset?" This leads to endless defensiveness when I am not angry at all and simply require a bit of support. I am finally in a position where I can thrive as a single mother. He can finally manage his own bills, even if it is just as a bus driver. I occasionally fantasize that he might become the next Neil Gaiman, albeit less eccentric and dysfunctional, but I genuinely believe this would be detrimental for him, given my experience with his financial and business decision-making. I have witnessed how anticipation of success can crush him with anxiety that spirals into despair when income fluctuates. His internal self-worth is fractured, and neither I, his fans, nor any level of material success can provide him the emotional stability necessary to be a good partner. So here I am 18 years, 5 children, and a mediocre net worth, feeling utterly drained by this marriage. At 42 years old, I feel both too old to start anew, but sufficiently young to find someone who possesses the emotional availability for a meaningful relationship, not to mention a stable financial foundation to avoid financial strain. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I refuse to continue settling for him. I understand that it is a sunk cost, and my mind is being irrational, thinking we should invest another year to see if it yields any results. I do not mean financially, but rather the hope for a stable partner who can be open and honest with me, someone with whom I can joyfully plan our future and receive support along the journey. How can my mind concoct more justifications for his potential turnaround after he has so clearly demonstrated who he is over the past 20 years? Story 3. OMG. After 2 years of no contact, she asks to meet. Sparks fly, but she still won't commit. Now she's moving away and I need to let go. I am seeking guidance, but it requires a significant amount of context. To begin, I, 25 male, have a close friend whom I will refer to as Sally, 25 female. We have been best friends since I was about 16 years old. We share a lot of history, and I have consistently had feelings for her. Early in our friendship, I revealed my feelings, but she did not reciprocate. This led to a period of about a year with no communication. When we re-established contact, I was overjoyed to have my best friend back, so I made a promise to myself that I would not allow my deeper feelings for her to interfere with our friendship. As a result, I constructed emotional barriers and locked those feelings away, content just to have her in my life in any way. Now, for more recent events. After a hiatus of approximately 2 years, she and I reconnected when I was 19. While home from college, I went out to dine at a restaurant where she served me. We rekindled our friendship, and I was thrilled to have her back, all while keeping my feelings suppressed. We communicated daily and spent time together almost constantly, in a platonic sense. We grew closer than ever before. Once summer ended, I returned to school, but we continued to talk frequently. One day, she expressed a desire to visit me. It was about a 3-hour drive for her. When she arrived, I was eager to show her around campus and spend time with her. One evening during her visit, she revealed that she had developed feelings for me since our reunion at the restaurant. I had been completely unaware of her feelings during our time spent together. One thing led to another, and let's just say we crossed into non-platonic territory. However, for various reasons, we agreed to keep things casual. I was somewhat anxious about dismantling the walls I had built, even though I realized that process had already begun. We agreed that while we would maintain our friends with benefits arrangement, we would refrain from behaving like a couple outside of our intimate encounters. She, however, didn't quite stick to this agreement, greeting me with kisses each time we met and holding my hand in public. Being somewhat weak-willed, I followed her lead, as I genuinely wanted a relationship with her. Then, suddenly, she became distant. Our daily conversations significantly decreased, despite my attempts to maintain communication. She continued to withdraw to the point where my closest friend started feeling like a stranger. She would still occasionally invite me over during her panic attacks or rough days, but those visits became infrequent. I started to feel like a convenient boyfriend, available whenever she needed comfort, and this began to take a toll on me. Eventually, I decided to be open about my feelings and told her she was the most important person in my life. I couldn't continue feeling like this, as it seemed mostly one-sided. I expressed my desire for her to be my girlfriend, hoping it would address the imbalance in our relationship. She declined, almost appearing offended by my wish to be in a relationship, and requested space. I was heartbroken and very confused since she had never shared her feelings or the reasons behind her distance from me initially. To begin moving forward, we decided to go no contact. Fast forward 2 years, I encountered her at a local bar. Our interaction was quite brief. During those 2 years without communication, I had developed some resentment towards her for how she treated me in the final stages of our relationship. She had been very cold in the way she pushed me away, making me feel small and insignificant, especially considering that she was the most important person in my life. 2 nights after that bar encounter, she texted me, asking if I could meet her at her apartment to discuss things that remained unspoken from her side. Hesitantly, yet curious about what she wanted to say, I agreed. This conversation unfolded in a manner entirely different from what I anticipated. She said all the right things, and I forgave her, letting go of the resentment I had been harboring. However, I made it abundantly clear that those emotional barriers I once had were now gone, and I could no longer simply be her friend. I knew my feelings remained strong, and I understood that it would not be long until a friendship would be insufficient for me. I had never truly stopped loving her. I left her apartment with the closure I had been denied 2 years prior. Yet that was not the end. The following morning, she FaceTimed me, and she continued to do so each day for the next month. I felt as if I were in a dream, so elated to have her back that all the negativity in life seemed to dissipate. I was happier than I had been in a long time. This month felt like time was frozen. I believed she must be open to exploring where this could lead, considering she knew I still desired to be more than friends. I could not have been more mistaken. Just like 2 years prior, she started becoming increasingly distant, while seemingly trying to keep me interested. In a final effort, I invited her out for a belated Valentine's dinner. She had been out of town on the actual holiday, and she agreed. I was overjoyed, diligently searching for the perfect gifts and planning an ideal evening. I thought perhaps she was not being distant after all, that I had been imagining it. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. When she returned to town, she evaded picking a date for our dinner. Finally, I asked why she had even agreed in the first place. This led her to reveal that while she cared for me, she still was not ready for a relationship. I was crushed once more, wishing she had expressed that sooner rather than building my hopes and prolonging the matter for over a month. She asked for space again, saying she would call me in a few weeks. When that call finally came, she announced she was moving out of state. This news shocked me and left me heartbroken. To make such a significant life decision and drop it on me without warning was difficult to process. I made the decision to prioritize my own well-being and told her, with a heavy heart, that I needed to distance myself from her life since I was repeatedly getting hurt. She did not agree and wanted us to remain friends, but I simply could not. I bid her farewell, expressing one last time how special and important she had been to me, and subsequently blocked her from all communication. 6 months later, while under the influence, I unblocked her. Although I didn't reach out initially, I had unblocked her number. This brings us to the current timeline. She texted me, and I lacked the strength to refrain from responding, which led to a lengthy 5-hour phone call. During that conversation, she expressed her desire to have me in her life since we had been best friends for so long. I conveyed that, as much as I wanted to, I still had feelings for her. I recognized that she did not feel the same, making it too painful for me to be part of her life. I explained that I would never be able to move on if I clung to the hope of one day being together. She claimed to not understand my point of view and remarked that it was unreasonable of me to think that just being friends with her isn't enough. I did my best to clarify that it wasn't that it was insufficient. Rather, it was so meaningful that I could not allow myself to pursue other relationships in anticipation that we might one day be together. The phone call ended with me agreeing to keep her number unblocked, but I remain uncertain about how to proceed. I desperately want to support her and be a part of her life, but I recognize this may ultimately drain me emotionally. I expressed this concern multiple times during our 5-hour conversation. Last night, she texted me again, inquiring if I had come to any conclusions about our situation. She wishes for me to be her friend. Is there a way to maintain this friendship without compromising my mental health or my ability to move on?